Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. As always, thanks for stopping by and hanging out for a few minutes. My name is Rich, I'm the channel host, and normally on this channel we're talking about drones and imaging, building our small drone business, doing autonomous flights, creating 2D and 3D models, a lot of drone stuff. Of course, we also talk about regular photography as well, and we talk about the gear that we use and what we're going through in building our own small drone business. So, over the weekend, we had a job to do for a client, and I thought I'd share part of this job with you. This kind of connects up to my Lightroom series that I've been doing on YouTube and on Teachable. And so part of this will probably end up in the Teachable class as well. So what we're looking at here is a raw land site. We specialize in a lot of raw land sites in construction progression work as well. This particular raw land site was a good distance out from our home base. So a bit of a drive for the day, but it did lead us up to a really pretty area, butted up against Forest Service. And so we were doing regular imaging for the client, and we were also doing 360s for the client. So while we were on location, flying our Mavic 2 drone, our Mavic 2 Pro drone, I should say, not only did we do your standard still images, we also did 360 images. When we got back to the office, we offloaded those images. We've got some images that are for the 360s and some images that are just standard images. But I wanted to take you through a couple parts of this. Number one, we used Litchi when we were actually doing our flights. So we used Litchi to mark out the boundary areas of the property for our standard shots. And then we also used Litchi to capture some 360s. Now, one of the interesting things on the Litchi app is that you can actually get a look at your 360 images, and Litchi will actually compile your 360s for you. So we're going to pull that up in a moment. But before we do, we did offload all of the images to my Lightroom gallery as well. And I'm just hitting the G key here. And at the moment, we're looking at 213 images from our shoot that day. And I am searching on the client's last name. So up in the search bar up here, I just typed in RHET, as that's part of the client's name. And while we're looking at this library of just the images that we imported from that flight, let's go over to the map module really quick. And the map module in Lightroom is going to show us all of the places that we actually took shots from. You'll notice some of those locations have numbers like 24 or 22. There's another 22, one more, and one more. As it turns out, on the Litchi app for doing the 360s, we use their automated function, and that automated function made the decision that 22 images per 360 scene would be good enough. So awesome. Now, the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to go back over to the library really quick, and we were just searching on the client's last name, but let's look on just the components for our 360s, and I created a keyword. Let's zoom in here. I created a keyword for myself called 360 parts for all the components that go into the 360s. So this narrows things down for me. We are now looking at, let's zoom in down here, we're now looking at 110 photos displayed out of 432 photos. So I know that we've drilled down to just those that we want to make 360s with. And let's take a look on the map now. Since we've narrowed our search, we've also narrowed this whole map view here. Now we are only showing off those images that will be used later in PTGui to make 360s. All right, let's move away from Lightroom for a minute and let's talk about Litchi and what it did for us. So right here, I've got what I call my drone phone. So this is an extra iPhone that's specifically just for our drone flights and doing our drone work. There's not much else on this thing. We are going to go ahead and do some screen mirroring really quick because I want to show you from the Litchi app what was captured and generated for our use. So in the Litchi app, we can actually have our 360s rendered. So I'm just popping out here and we're going to go over to the Litchi app. And there we go. We've got the Litchi app up right now. I've got it set to waypoint missions, and I'm going to go to that client's location. So this might look a little familiar compared to that Lightroom map. This was just an area that I blocked out for myself, knowing that this is the area I wanted to be flying in when capturing all of my images. So we didn't just capture images from those corners, we captured images from all over that property. And I think that screen is big enough right now. So for the moment, we're in waypoint, but on the upper left-hand side here where it says waypoint, I can tap up there and I can go down to Pano. So now I've got the blanked out map area, but I do know that I'm flying in the right area. So if I were to do a couple of 360s right down the center here, we know that we're going to be covering that property. We'll also be capturing other properties as well off in the distance, but we're going to give a great showcase to that property. Now, if we were connected up to the drone over on the left-hand side, little globe symbol, it's telling me Auto Pano automatically optimizes camera settings. That's where we got our 22 images from, okay? I'm going to hit cancel because we're not going to fly a mission right now. But one of the nice things that you can do with Litchi when you're doing your 360 captures is it will actually retain some of that information for you. So right below that globe, we've got a little folder symbol. And on that folder symbol, we have the 360s that got compiled. So I always compile the 360s after the drone has landed. You could do it in midair. Not a good suggestion. If you're running low on battery and you're trying to have this thing actually render your Panos, you could run out of power between the rendering and when it's finally completed. So what I usually do is fly through the site, take the images for the 360s, land the drone. If I need to put a new battery in it, I will, and we can process these images. The better thing would be to do the post-processing after you've returned to the office so that you're not running down all your batteries in the field while you're still trying to capture for the client. Now you will notice that each of these panoramas in the panorama database has a date that goes along with it. So January 8th of 2022. So we've got several of these, one at 11:33, 11:31, 11:29, 11:26. You get the idea. We did several of these. One of the nice things when you tap into it, I'm just giving it a quick tap. So this is what the rendering for the 360 looks like. Now, coming right out of my smart device, I can actually use these images, which is absolutely awesome. So I can throw them into one of my 360 viewers, which we'll do momentarily for you. And also on the app, if I were to process in the field, and if I were to go to the view the 360, I can actually scroll on through here. So while I'm in the field, if I have landed after it, I can get an idea of how well or how poorly we've done. I'm just going to give this a tap and hit the back button. So what are the other options on here? So we can do the flat for the full 360 tour feel. We can do a tiny planet. Then we can do 3 different quality settings, low, medium, or high. And then in the upper right corner, you recognize the trash can. But right next to the trash can to the left is an upload button. So you can actually share it to your smart device. All right, let's go ahead back out of the panorama database and let's just we're going to go ahead and pick one more of these just to tap on real quick. So this is definitely from a different location. Once again, we can view in 360, that bottom right-hand corner. And now I can start moving this around to see how it performed. Now, one of the things you might notice when you're looking at these up at the top, you see this weird litchi.com. That's to fill in the sky where the sky isn't fully filled in yet. Remember, when we're taking 360s with our drone, if we're using our drone's camera, it can't shoot straight up. So it can only go about 30 degrees up. So we're going to be missing some information in the sky, but we can correct that. We can either use Litchi's replacement for the zenith, or we can make our own replacement after editing in Lightroom and PTGui, which we're going to get to in just a bit. Now, let me arrow this back. So when it was all completed, I actually processed each of these, and it does take a few moments to process each one of these. And then it's stored in my Litchi database, and those images, all the images that went into it, are also on my micro SD card from my drone if I want to use something other than Litchi's rendering. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this out here. So we're going to just get rid of Litchi on the screen. And from that Litchi screen where we could upload things, we can actually go over and take a look at our photo albums. And here's from that last trip. So you can see those things up top. Now, so what did I do then? I've got the images on my drone phone. I can actually upload those images to my hard drive, and then we can take a closer look at those images. So first of all, I don't want to actually turn off Air Server. Let's go ahead and close this. And now let's stop that mirroring, shall we? All right, and now the mirroring is stopped. So back at the office, one of the next things that I regularly do is I will get my offloads done. So I'm going to go into my download folder, because from my phone, when I do my AirDrop sharing, all of that gets dropped into my downloads. Now, each of these images is from that shoot day, and these are the fully rendered images from Litchi. So this is what Litchi did in the app with the data from the camera. So not bad looking. Let's take a look. Let's go ahead and close this one down, and let's drag this onto Affinity Photo. So in Affinity Photo, one of the really great tools in it happens to be a live 360 viewer that then you can edit from as well. So I'm often jumping over into Affinity for my final parts of my 360s. Let's go to Layer, let's go to Live Projection, and Equirectangular. So here we go, our first 360 of the day. There's the Nissan Titan out on the property, and there's all of the main property area. Now let's go take a look up at the sky. And check that out. So that weird little thing, let's open this up again. That strange little area with, this strangely laid out Litchi logo now looks much better. So there we go. Flylitchi.com, not bad. So pretty much after going out onto the location and returning to the office and offloading these particular finished images, these images could in fact be posted in a tour now. The one thing you got to keep in mind though, since I've got that Litchi.com up there in the zenith, if you're providing this for clients who are going to be putting it to MLS, we don't want any logos or advertisements. That's one of the MLS rules. So one of the things, that really cool Litchi logo, we need to get rid of it because it's not going to pass muster for MLS. Now, any other presentations you do, this is perfectly fine, and it actually looks great. And 9 times out of 10, most people are not going to be looking up at the sky. They're going to actually be viewing the property. So very quickly, very easily, we did our flight. We captured our images for the 360s. When we landed the drone, we did have some initial processing done by the Litchi app so that I could show you these. And let's go ahead and close this one. Don't save it. And let's just drag another one in here so we can just take a look one more time. Once again, there's that Litchi rendering. We go to the live projection, equirectangular, and here we are out on the property. And don't forget, up at the top, we do have that Litchi logo. So either we could get rid of the Litchi logo here, or we could do some additional processing if we want a little more hands-on with the images that we shot for compilation. Those images are loaded into Lightroom, and that's what's going to be in the next segment of this video. All right, after our brief intermission there, we are back for the next part of this video. So now we're going to take a look at Lightroom and all of the images that we offloaded for that particular property. So I'm just pulling up in here. Now, it's very easy to find things in Lightroom if you label them, if you actually utilize the keyword tags. It makes it very easy to find different shoots that you do. So every time I come back from the field and I do an offload, I always make sure that I have multiple keywords that are going to help me find my images very quickly. So as you can see in here, we have 360 parts, press kit, real estate photos, ret lot 2. So these are pretty quick indicators to me on what images I want to be working with. So that's one of the powerful features of Lightroom, is that we can utilize these keywords and we can use other attributes as well, metadata as well. So you get the idea. And if you haven't seen this before, in part 2 of my YouTube series on Lightroom, I actually talk about being able to find our images quickly. Now, what I want to find here is all of the images that I called 360 parts. So those that actually feed into making my own 360s. Now we saw the 360s that come right out of Litchi, but we can also render the 360s with the individual images that Litchi gives us. This works very similar to the DJI Go 4 app as well. The Go 4 app has a 360 Pano mode as well, and you do get all the components out of it. Now I know for a fact, because Litchi told me, that each of my scenes is going to be 22 images. So for the first one, if I go right here from that first one down to number 22, this should be everything I need to create a 360 Pano with an external application called PTGui. Now, you can't stitch together 360 Panos in Lightroom like you can with PTGui or what's on board with Litchi or any of the cloud hosting services out there as well. So that's not a feature that Lightroom has, but you can actually connect your 360 stitcher to Lightroom. So I'm just going up to the left-hand corner to Preferences. I just want to show you on external editing, the first one I have is Adobe Photoshop 2022. The second external editor that I have is called PTGui. So in my preferences, I have my settings for exporting things to PTGui, and I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now, let's take a look at those 22 images from number 1 right here all the way down to number 22. We've got them selected already. So if I right click and I go to edit in, one of my options is to edit in PTGui. If I click on that, we're going to be waiting for a moment, and it's popped up our export panel. So we're going to edit this with PTGui. We're going to edit the original images, or we can also edit with a copy with Lightroom adjustments. We're going to edit the original, and I'm going to hit that because the original is actually 22 images. And now we've launched PTGui, which is one of my favorite stitchers out there for 360s. And if we look through here, we have 22 images. Now what I'm going to do is click on Align the Images. And after aligning the images, hey, does this look like a 360 to you? Yes, it does. So the one problem that we do have here is what we're going to do to fill in that blank space where the drone did not capture anything above where the gimbal could tilt. But this is looking like it's going to be a good 360. So I can go back over to my main panel here with our project assistant, source images, lens settings. So there are a lot of additional features for doing 360 panos in PTGui. There's a lot more control than some of these automated features, like the automated feature right from the Litchi app. But we could use those images from the Litchi app to get a tour up very quickly, or we could do something like this where we're utilizing PTGui to finish our corrections for ourselves. One of the things that I might want to do is deal with the exposure and have a little bit of exposure compensation. And I'm going to go ahead and hit optimize. And that's just going to help us out with the image a little more. And this is what the day looked like. It was a very drab day. It's winter in northern Arizona, so to be expected. But if we're ready to go, we can actually go down to create panorama because that's looking pretty good to me. And we can now put our settings in here for that panorama that we're doing. So let's do this 6,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. And let's go ahead and we'll do this as a JPEG. Normally I will export this, or I will export this as a TIFF, giving myself a little more editing range. But since we're doing this for a tutorial, we're just going to stick with this one. Once we're all set with that, it is putting it back into the folder that it came from, where it came from in Lightroom. So volumes 2022 live, the 2022 Lightroom library, 2022 Lightroom library for January 8th. And there's the name of it, Panorama JPEG, so 0035. If I hit create panorama here, it is going to make a new panorama for us, and it's actually going to pop it back into Lightroom. So I'm going to close PTGui real quick, and I'm not going to save this project. So all right, there we go. There's our 22 original, but what we're missing here, I don't see that new image. Well, that new image was saved back to the folder it came from in Lightroom, okay? it needs to be synchronized. So I'm just going to right click on 2022 and I'm going to synchronize the folder, and it shows me right here, we just made a new image. So import the new photo, and there's only one. But if I went through and did all of these and then imported them afterward, we'd have 5 of them. I'm going to hit synchronize here. And when it does its synchronize, check this out. It treats it as a new import. But that is the image we were looking for. Now, my next step could be a very simple step where I go into Affinity Photo to fix these things up, to fix that sky. Or I could also go into Photoshop to fix that sky or stretch things out. Whatever I want to do to fill in this zenith area. Remember that zenith area had the Litchi, the flyLitchi.com at the top of it. And once again, we don't want those types of advertisements for MLS. So my next step in this, I could do some fine tuning right in here with Lightroom. We could go over to the develop module and we could play around with this a little more. We could also go to the map and just see there's where that first image was taken from. All right. So now we know where that first image was taken from. Our truck was parked right in here and we're off and running. We could also go back and process all of the rest. So we had that one previous import. Let's go back here real quick. And let's go to that text and 360 parts because that's what I labeled it as. And we will see here, we're still not seeing this one. Why aren't we seeing this one? Because the keyword tag wasn't put into there. So I'm going to do 360 parts for my keyword tag here now. And now if we go back in, let's go to text, and we got 360 parts. Hey, there's that image. So now that we have the new image, what's our next step? Well, we could throw this over into Affinity Photo or into Photoshop or any of our other favorite editing programs to deal with this zenith area here in the sky. So as you can see, this is where the camera didn't capture. So now we need to fill something in here. Otherwise, we're going to have a big blank box up above. One of the things we can do, let's go down to Edit In, and I'm going to edit this in Photoshop. I'm going to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, so that way we keep the original and our adjusted one. I'm going to hit Edit. And here we are in Photoshop. Now I'm going to do one quick way to replace that top sky area. This isn't the recommended method, but this is a quick way to fix the sky. I just did the selection tool and I'm hitting Command J for duplicating the layer. I'm then going to hit Command T, and for that, what's going to happen is a free transform. So now I can drag that sky on up, and we can go with this. So when I bring this back into Lightroom, this is going to be viewable on, let's say, Affinity or any other 360 viewer. We've got a stretched out sun, but remember, most people start at the horizon and they're going to be looking at the property and they're not going to be looking up. So this is a really, really quick way to handle that zenith point on the 360. I'm going to go ahead and hit close on this, but I'm going to hit save as well. So it's currently saving for me as a copy, if you remember. So let's close Photoshop and let's take a look in Lightroom now. Up there it is. So here's the results that came in from PTGui, and then our final little bit of editing. Now we're ready to export this out and maybe do some additional touch-ups in Affinity Photo or Photoshop or whatever your favorite photo editing program is. So there we go. We've covered how we can get these out of Litchi directly and how we get the images into Lightroom, manage the images, and get the images prepped for actually going up on a 360 tour display. So I hope this information was useful to you. And if you have other drone interests, if you're interested in autonomous flight, doing mapping and modeling, doing construction progression reporting, please feel free to pop by our Teachable site, az-drone.teachable.com. The link will be down in the notes, and the link will be up in the right-hand corner with the info cards as well. So I hope this one was useful. I know it was a little long, but I hope you're taking something away from it to help you in building your own 360 tours with your drones as well.